I grew up in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. My father is a large animal veterinarian. He managed 9 different livestock farms in Lancaster County, and so I had an enormous backyard as a kid. A lot of freedom, and not a stitch of art anywhere to be found. I came to sculpture through photography initially, and so I've passed through a lot of different disciplines over the course of the arc of my career. And I feel like all of those are accessible to me somehow, but right now I make sculpture, and I have been doing so for a long, long time. When I went into sculpture as an undergraduate student, this was at the Kansas City Art Institute. Sculpture departments at that time in art schools were kind of like a very interesting emerging multimedia time and space discipline. I had peers that were making video, they were doing performance, they were doing film, they were also doing photography and making sculpture. So it was a big house where a lot of things could clash up against each other and argue with each other, and it was very exciting. I did 1 year of graduate school studying in the UK. That was a very powerful year for me, and then I finished my MFA in Chicago at the Art Institute there. I moved here in 2000. I'm the department head now for sculpture at the Rhode Island School of Design. I teach undergraduate classes and graduate students. It's a really great program. All through my 8 years of art school, I did metal casting. And I discovered that there was a part of the process of making cast objects that interested me more than the final metal object, and that was making the wooden pattern to make the cast object. So I taught myself pretty much woodworking on my own through books, and that's kind of how I've been doing it my whole life. It's like I look and I go, wow, that's how you make a surfboard? Cool, I can do that. My first full love affair with sculpture is working with wood. It was always like homogeneous, so you cut through the thing and it's wood all the way through. If you want to kind of click and drag to styrofoam, it's the same thing. It's just faster and cheaper. So I've been working in styrofoam and epoxy resin now for some time. And the sculptures start as kind of foam armatures that I modify and carve and cut as I go. In the past, with a little bit of predictability. In other words, I would draw out the sculpture and then I'd kind of make it. Now I'm sort of working more blindly into the process with a sensation in mind. So I start with some forms that come directly out of a drawing that I might be working on, and then I let the sensation of the work try to take over my hand as I'm going. More and more I'm liking to be surprised by the outcome, letting it kind of lead into something. So I often start with a working title. Like that gives me this kind of bookmark for a sensation that I'm going toward. So it's a little bit like songwriting. The working title for this piece is Nevermind, which actually, in full disclosure, is one of my favorite rock albums ever made. I've always liked the word, like what it means, like don't look here, don't pay any attention to this. It sort of seems like a good working title for this piece because it's sort of asking for a lot of visual attention because it's so active. At the same time, there's an element of insignificance here too. So that's just the existentialist in me. I look at a lot of different things. I look at images from botany, images from biology. I look at hot rod stuff. I look at surfing imagery. I've looked at that stuff all throughout. I've looked at a lot of psychedelic stuff. I think early on, psychedelia and psychedelia music were big influences on me. And so that free form thing is in there, but there's also a structure in the work that I'm really trying to work toward, and that's the sensation I'm talking about. So it is this thing that's in a frozen state. I mean, that's the sculpture part, that's the capital S part. That's like maybe the Baroque or even the erotic sensation in the work, that there's something happening but it's kind of frozen in time. I don't try to pretend that there's an illusion about that it's actually liquid. I'm really actually accentuating the fact that it's a solid by making it a little bit on the goofy side. Just moving it gently over to the, maybe over to the humorous or the cartoony edge. Once the thing is finalized, the next part is actually a scarier commitment, but it takes the least amount of time. And that is, the work gets then covered with resin and different reinforcing fabrics like either fiberglass or carbon fiber. I use different fabrics for different purposes. I keep about 6 different weaves in the studio because they serve different purposes, both physically and aesthetically. When I'm working, I keep a color book open a lot. It's a swatch book from a custom car paint company, and so I'm often sort of like rolling through these as I'm working, like what are the colors of these forms. What's lovely about custom paint is it's layers of color. It's a base coat, it's a candy coat, it's maybe a pearl. It isn't just standard out of the can paint, it's actually a thing that takes maybe up to 12 coats to complete once the thing is finished. I received a Guggenheim Fellowship this year. It's really made me sort of think about the immediate future and what my big dreams are for the studio. A number of years back, I did an exhibition at the Tang Museum up at Skidmore. We produced a fairly large-scale laser-cut stainless steel spider web for the entrance to that exhibition, and I've wanted to revisit that ever since. So I believe this year I'm going to work with a fabricator and make a much larger version of that. I think the most important thing for young artists going out in the world to have is confidence in their ability to teach themselves something. I think that's the most important thing, because I think you won't survive otherwise. I think that's maybe my whole raison d'etre. It's like sort of being able to have the self-confidence to say, yeah, I can do that, I have to do it, I need to do it, so I will figure out a way to do it. This is pretty much it. I'm going to be doing this, making weird things. The weirder, the better, and the longer, the better.